Hi.
Hi.
Hey, everybody. So good to see everybody here.
Good to
Yeah.
see you.
So on today's show, we have Jen Gilmour, who is a multi-talented social media expert, host of Abuse Talk, the author of Isolation Junction, I think, and general advocate and really nice person. And I know that a certain Legoland wearing hat person is very excited to have Jen on the show. So maybe
I'm
I'll
very
let Tracy talk
excited.
for a little while.
I don't know if I'm more excited about my Legoland hat or you, Jen. But just to let you know, we were talking about amusement parks, and last week I said I'm not really into amusement parks. I don't care for roller coasters and things. And then just the other day it hit me, but I love my Legoland. So here it is. But I'm just happy that you're able to make it with us, especially coming out of your own busy schedule. So thank you for being our guest.
No, thank you for the opportunity. I must apologise. My temporary office is in the bedroom, so it's like a mess. It's like not where I would usually be. Maybe be in the office area with a nice background, but I don't have that right now. So you've got my makeup. Well, that's like that for everyone, right?
That's the subject in of itself, is what kind of cosmetics you use.
Or where we're
We've only got an hour.
Right. We've only got an hour. You're right.
That's funny. Hi, Jennifer. So nice to meet you. I got to meet you on your chat last week. So that was such a great experience to kind of come in and meet you and see what you do online through Twitter.
Yeah, I love that.
Your Twitter hashtag is, what is it again?
Hashtag Abuse Talk.
Hashtag Abuse Talk. I'm looking forward to getting into that and seeing what brought you to going online, talking about abuse and supporting so many victims of abuse, or survivors, I should say, overcomers. So I'm looking forward to hearing your story a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's really nice to hear that obviously April has been reading my book, and then Christelle, you've been on hashtag Abuse Talk. Tim, we already know each other anyway. So it's quite nice that you've all taken that time to sort of have a look and see what things are like and the work that I do. So thank you. I really appreciate that.
Wonderful.
You're welcome.
Can I, or Tim, were you going to ask a question?
I can ask a question. Both April and Christelle have got experience in different ways with domestic abuse. But I was going to start with a general question about obviously loads of people in the world are in isolation at the moment. Do you think that domestic abuse is getting enough attention now, given that clearly there are anecdotal reports and other reports of domestic abuse going up because of isolation? Have you got any views on kind of how, like, what people, if anybody was watching this who was suffering from domestic abuse at the moment, what kind of things would you suggest they do? And also, just more widely, how do you think that this isolation has affected people in terms of domestic abuse? It's a bit boring question.
Yeah, so I think the latest statistic, which was in the UK government report, was that there was 125% increase to the National Domestic Abuse Hotline that is available to call 24/7 here in the UK. And I'm sure there'll be others in, other hotlines around the world. And I think that's only just, 3 weeks in. I would say it's great that we got that talk. I think it was on Saturday or Sunday, from the Home Office Secretary, and her talking about domestic abuse. But I think that should have been done earlier. I think we should always have this awareness around domestic abuse. Yes, lockdown and this situation that we're in has heightened everything. It's a pressure cooker situation. And if you think about an abuser and what they want to do and achieve, that's coercive, like coercive control, for example. They want to control that person and that situation. So this situation right now is out of their control. So even if you look at the dynamics of it, it's just not very helpful at this time. I would say for people that are watching it and feeling maybe that they need that help and support, to reach out to anyone, whether that's a look at the support services online. There's lots of online chats available, and I'm talking about charity, chats like Women's Aid and Refuge and local services at the moment, which is great to see. Or even ringing 999 in emergency, and that's what we have in the UK. So you can ring 999, and if you can't speak, you can just press 55. So the police are still alerted that you are needed that help for an emergency. I would say reach out. So I've had plenty of people reach out to me at this time, and then I'm able to signpost them to a local service, or be able to even connect them to a solicitor if it's more of a legal matter, because obviously we've got a lot of issues to do with the family court system at the moment as well. So maybe the ex-partner withholding the children because of the coronavirus, and that being an issue, but also that some of the issues cross paths between the criminal and the family court. So I have a solicitor that answers questions and gives guidance for completely free. So anybody can access that through #AbuseTalk as well.
So if I may, Jennifer, interrupt you real quickly. For the United States audience, solicitor is attorney, correct?
Yeah, or a lawyer. Is that what we would call them? A lawyer?
Yeah, lawyer. Yeah. Make sure everybody in the U.S. watching. Thank you.
Yeah, and to be honest, I've helped people come out of relationships all around the world. So whether that be Australia, help somebody in Africa leave an abusive relationship, different places I would never have imagined. And the most important thing is that I'm able to connect them to that local service. So if that was an issue that they couldn't find it through the internet, or be able to, I'll be able to find something in that area. So reaching out even to hopefully relatives that know what to do. And I think that's the awareness that I want to bring at this time in lockdown, is giving us the opportunity to be observant and look out for somebody that may be in an abusive relationship. So you may have seen that I did a video with a lady called Sue Penner, and she is a program writer in the UK, and she delivers trauma-informed programs all about recovery. Her program changed my life, so that's part of my story. Wow. And she's now the sponsor for #AbuseTalk with what's called Rock Pool. We talked about how, as neighbours or as community members or as volunteers, we could have that responsibility to look for a potential abusive household and how we could help that person. So we even came up with signs that we could pick up between neighbours. So you can watch the full video. It's on my YouTube channel or on my blog anyway. It's only 15 minutes long. We really kept it short and to the point. But if you think about, maybe you're in a terraced house, that's what I'm in. What do our neighbours sound like? What should we be looking out for between the difference between a healthy relationship and an unhealthy? So we really pulled that apart. And also for volunteers, maybe they're going to that home, looking for the dynamics. We should have that awareness about us to be able to help that person when they may not have a voice at the moment. I think I answered it in like a really big nutshell there.
You did. You did a question too. The trauma-informed care, I'm very interested in hearing more about. I recently started working in a local organization that brought trauma-informed care to the forefront. And what I do, I work for a homeless shelter, and we work with a lot of victims of abuse in multiple ways. And this was the first time that I've heard of trauma-informed care. So I'm very interested in specifically the trauma-informed care that you've learned. And maybe could you point out a couple of tips that might be trauma-informed language that we could use?
Yeah, so when we're talking about trauma-informed, it's so if we take it in the context that I learned it in, I went on a recovery toolkit for domestic abuse after my relationship, obviously. And that program basically was all about moving forwards and not actually talking about the abuse in a direct way. So for a lot of people, it's quite, I'd feel naked talking about it in the beginning, and embarrassed and ashamed, and a bunch of other words I could say. And so it was really great to have permission not to talk about it. And so what we did, I think even in the first one, we were told that our homework was to go and do something for 5 minutes, give ourselves something for 5 minutes that week. And even if it's go for a walk or have a bath, or, you know, I mean, if I was thinking now, I'd be like, oh, shopping, get my nails done, and this is this. But we came back the next week, and who did that homework? Nobody. Pretty much nobody did that homework. Mine was to have a bath, just a simple task, a bath. And I put my toes in that bath, and then I realized, no, I can't do that because my children need me. So automatically I couldn't do it. So then in the second week, we pulled apart, why did nobody complete their homework? And looking at what has happened to get to that point, and then to work on that trauma to move forward. So it's all really proactive in that recovery. And so it's becoming aware of what's happened rather than being told what's happened. So I hope that helps. And there's information you can go to rockpool.life for their website. They don't just do domestic abuse, they do gangs is their new one, but they do family programs if you want to stay with that person that you're in a relationship with and you're not ready to leave. There's a program for that. There's a program for ACEs, which in the UK is adverse child experiences, and that's how we calculate risk for children living in maybe vulnerable homes. So that's not just abuse, that could be alcoholism or drug abuse or mental health issues. So they've got a wide range, and their mission is to have a trauma-informed society, which is what we should all be.
Isn't that the truth? Especially right now with a lot of disasters happening. It's that old, I think it was an old commercial that aired here in the US and maybe there too, the more you know. And that's the truth. The more you know, the more you can see the red flags, potential red flags. And if you have the language, if we're all trained in the language, then we can know how to approach a person so that they feel comfortable enough to open up.
I completely agree with that.
So one of the things I wanted to say to you, Jen, when I was reading your book is that I wanted to compliment you, and I made a couple of notes for myself here because my memory's so bad, but I wanted to compliment you on doing a couple of things that's really hard to do, and that is conveying, let me see what I put here, conveying the abuser tactics that lead to isolation. You know, you can speak about that all you want to, but when you're putting it on paper, it can be hard to convey that, and you did it so well. Also conveying the tension building phase. I mean, you kicked the book off with an incident of that tension building phase, and I thought that was pretty amazing. If you don't mind, if you're comfortable, how long were you in your abusive relationship?
So I was in my relationship for several years, and I would probably say within the last year I felt more, what do you call it, like happy and able to give myself permission to do things. So Tim, you've probably met me at a really good time in my life because I'm putting myself out there a lot more. I'm not afraid to talk about what I'm doing. Before I just did it, put it together and put it out there. I didn't tell people what I did. I didn't even go to networking events. So really something really small was even meeting up with a man for coffee to talk about business. That would be an issue because I shouldn't be near men or anything like that. So it's really, really difficult to sort of, but if we're looking at the trauma informed again and the recovery process, I've not overwhelmed myself with the recovery. I take things step by step and I choose what I'm going to recover from or what I'm going to choose to get over next, if that makes sense, because otherwise you're just going to overwhelm yourself and not be able to do it. with the book, I'm really happy that you picked up on those things, because it was raw when I wrote it, because it was, I started the project about 9 months after the relationship had ended, so it's pretty raw.
Wow.
Yeah, and I think I spent about 1.5 to 2 years writing it before I published it, and
Wow.
I had a massive panic attack the night before I published it. But for anybody that doesn't know about Isolation Junction, it is written as a form of entertainment, so you read it as that fiction, but at the end of it, hopefully you're more educated on specifically emotional abuse. And it was really hard not to write physical abuse in there. I think there might be a tiny element, but the whole point was about emotional abuse and coercive control, because at the time there was no UK law to protect me, so I felt that this was the only way that I was going to raise awareness in the UK. And this is what it looks like, for hopefully I get the right side of the book. So
yeah, and it's also a great cover, and I didn't get a chance to look at all the little details. Did you go with a publisher, or are you an indie publisher?
So I was
I'm sorry.
That's all right. I was self-published at first, and used my own editor and everything. And then I joined this sort of group of people called Picked Publishing, and they're about empowering voices of women. So when that happened, my cover changed. So I fit right in with that. So, I mean, I just think for me, getting self-published first, it was really important because I needed to get the message out fast. So that was the way I was going to do it.
And why did you feel, oh, I'm sorry, Tim, go ahead.
No, well, I was just going to say, I'm sure there's a lot of people who are tuning in who have no idea what coercive control is.
Oh, good question.
Because, well, as you say, your book is one of the books that explains that concept, and it was certainly something I hadn't heard of until like a couple of years ago. So maybe just for like the people who were like, what does she mean by coercive control?
Well, I mean, if you looked at the definition of coercive control, in the UK, you'd probably not understand it at all. but what we're talking about is somebody who is abusive emotionally. So I try and say emotional abuse, but that doesn't really cover it, does it? You're looking at somebody who is trying to eliminate every form of contact from your life, and it's very a progressive form of abuse. Usually it's the one you'll hear about in the news in the terms of, oh, I never, he was just such a nice guy, why did he randomly kill that person? Actually, you don't see that side of him. Only the victim will probably see that side of that person. I'd say him, it's not just him, it's men and women. So it's 1 in 6 men and 1 in 4 women that will have that experience of domestic abuse. So for me, in my relationship, it started out to try and explain it in a relatable way. He was very complimentary, and for me as a vulnerable student at university, and for somebody who was bullied at school and was never looked at as physically attractive, he was very specific with his compliments, and he really did go to town with that, and that attracted me in. So there's like a grooming stage, and right at the beginning, he would take things out of my life in a really subtle way. So for example, if we were going to the cinema with the friends, he'd be like, but I haven't seen you all day and I really love you, could you I really want to spend some time with you. So you'd feel guilty in letting that person down, so you'd cancel your friends, and then once you've done that, they kind of know that they can take it up a level, to the point of that progression where actually you haven't seen your family for 2 years, you're dependent on them for their knowledge. So, and it's all done subtly with the threat. So it's you're coerced into thinking something bad is going to happen, and you ultimately believe it's going to happen, even though there may be minor physical incidents. And so it even got to the point for me where he actually went shopping for my clothes by the end of that relationship. So you can see the level of control. I hadn't returned home for those 2 years, which was, very upsetting. And if you ask my family, they said my personality had completely, changed because of it. I was very robotic and non-emotional, and I was a very fun person to be around before then. So you can kind of see the work that was being made, but it's really hard to understand when you look at the definition. And I think reading, say, my book might help, or reading other people's stories might help you gain that better understanding, the lived experiences, to really show how that person hooks on into your life and takes control. And as I say, the incidences start off maybe once every few months. And by the end of it, it's every day or every hour. So it really, really takes time to get going, really. Because I mean, if you knew it was going to be an abusive relationship, and if you knew, hi, this is my name and this is what's going to happen to you in the next 5 years, you're not going to enter it, are you?
No.
Right. Right. It's kind of like the old saying, about the pedophile. Okay, he doesn't look the same as every, the scary guy in dark alleys. If they introduced themselves, or the rapists, they wouldn't be able to gain our trust, right?
Yeah. Go on, Crystal.
I'm kind of, it sounds like grooming. It's a grooming tactic, and it happens so slow and over time that you don't realize. I like that you pointed out, because this is so common, and this was my experience as well. People like us, people who have experienced abuse in any kind of way, people who have experience with narcissistic abuse, we wouldn't jump into a relationship if we knew the end was going to be as tragic and as bad as it is. But in fact, it's a slow progression that might even take years, even decades. And so my question for you now is, what gave you the courage to leave, or why did you finally leave? Maybe you didn't even find the courage. What happened?
Okay, I'll get to that. I want to say as well, something that you might find interesting is that when I was going through this program, we were asked to look at what a prisoner of war would go through. So the torture techniques, which includes the grooming phase of, adapting them to their lives, like things like lack of sleep, choosing what you can eat, having all of that control, taking you away from your friends and family. For me, a big part of what I went through was sleep deprivation. I wasn't able to sleep. Sometimes I had to sleep on the floor, even when I was pregnant. He'd wake me up with throwing water over me, or for a purposeful argument in the middle of the night. So he didn't want me to have an adequate amount of sleep. So I was constantly in a confused state. But it's really, interesting when you look at the prisoner of war and what they experienced in that torture, and really what an abusive person actually goes through. So that would be a good comparison. So to go to your question, so I feel very in a lucky situation to have gotten out. So at the time, I knew there was something not right in the relationship. I would never have said it was abusive. I didn't have that. You're just not there. It's really hard to describe, but you're not there in that that state of mind, really. Or even people told me it wasn't a right relationship, and somebody did use the term abusive, but I would have said no, I was protecting him. And he actually got to the point of ending the relationship. And for some reason in my head, I'd started to build confidence, and I realised I was not going to beg him to take me back, and I was going to action what he said. And that came with that confidence building. And how I gained some of this confidence was because he actually deprived me from working. So I wasn't allowed to work the hours I was meant to at work. And in the end, I realised what would be easier was to start up a business at home, because then he couldn't argue with me, which then meant I was able to network online with people and have those conversations, and I had a valid excuse to talk to new people, and I didn't have to go out and see them. We have, this world of online like we see now. And actually connecting with people and them telling me my business idea was good gave me the confidence. And to try and really explain it shortly, I actually got a temporary job because I realised I needed money to be able to get out of the situation. And the manager at that job, I temporarily worked at Game because I was a big gamer, and not so much anymore. And he was my ex as a gamer, so I thought this would maybe frustrate him. And also I knew there was a few guys there, so for me I was probably playing a dangerous game. But the manager there actually recognized what was happening. He wouldn't have said it was abuse because he wasn't educated in it. He just knew that I was being treated incorrectly. And we were actually separated for about 3 months, but we were still living under the same roof. And I befriended this manager at work. He's now my husband. He gave up his job for me. He moved across the country as a friend, and he supported me ever since. And without him, I probably would have gone back. So I feel really lucky that I've had that support. He told me eventually when he started looking it was abuse and to go on to this program that I went on. And he's really the silent person in the background that nobody ever gets to hear about. And I don't want to get emotional because it's late at night and I've had so much screen time. But he saved me in his own way. And I look at women that are coming out of that relationship with no support at all, and I commend them on that because I don't think I would have been strong enough to do it.
Wow. That's some serious honesty. And I appreciate that you're telling your truth like that, because anyone who's been in a relationship like that, I kind of feel like, and we always said this, I don't know if you agree or not where you are, but emotional abuse can be worse than the physical abuse, even though the physical is pretty brutal. I've seen a lot of bad stuff, but the emotional scars are really hard to overcome. So you're admitting that is, it seems like, I think when you're in a relationship like that, we haven't talked about it, but you do mention the honeymoon stage as well in your book. And I think when someone is an emotional abuser, coercive control that you're talking about, it's easier a little bit to justify it in our mind. Well, he's not hitting me. He wouldn't hit me, never hit me. It's just easier. And then there's some sort of relationship pull towards that person, because I know I dated someone who was like that years and years back. And when the relationship was good, it was great. When it was bad, it was murder, and that's kind of what I think that coercive control is like. There's an addictive component there between you and between a person and an emotional abuser. So I appreciate you being straightforward about it. Do you mind if I ask? I'd like to just kind of double back a little bit, because I think this would be useful for someone. I can relate to it in my own way. Is that you said that when you started doing this, you kind of kept this on the down low. You didn't really want anybody to know it was you or what you'd been through. Do you mind if I ask why?
I was embarrassed and ashamed straight off. I felt that I was going to be targeted because of what I've done. Technically, I've left a door open to that person to continue to abuse me. And to be honest, abuse doesn't stop when the relationship does. It just changes to like stalking. So it's just changed the name of it. And also like going to what you were saying about the trauma bond. So that's what we would call a trauma bond, is actually you kind of you're dependent on that person. They feed you just like you feed them. And you're wanting to get a response yourself to know that you're acknowledged in life. And there was times that I wanted to go back, even though I was happily in another new relationship, and because I wanted the pain and the upset to stop, because I went and entered the family court system. And sometimes it's like, it would just be easier. I was so exhausted. I was on, I'm happy to talk about that. I was on anxiety medication. And I really put myself to a point where I was like, I'm not going to be another statistic. I refuse to have this help. In the end, I would not have functioned without it, because I had to see him every single week for a period of time. It then went to every fortnight, and I don't have to see him anymore. Which is probably why I'm in my biggest stage of recovery and moving forward. And for going back to your question, truly, is that I put it out there. There's one thing putting it out there. There's another thing being able to talk about it like this and giving myself boundaries. So if you asked me a question I didn't want to answer, I would answer it in a different way. But back then, I wouldn't have had the ability to do that. I would have, maybe been triggered or been stuck or whatever. Now it's not an issue. I don't mind doing interviews, or I've done TV interviews and it's in the newspaper and everything. And for me, the importance is that we get that awareness out there. And I feel like I've got a responsibility, especially for those that have read my book and really commit to engaging or sharing my content. It sort of gives me that motivation to continue.
Yeah, and it should, because the book is written impeccably well. I mean, I'm not going to lie, I've read mine. As Tim or Christelle said in the beginning, I have experience in this. I currently have a couple of clients. I just don't really talk about it that much. I'll always, my hand or foot is always there, because I've been doing that work so long, and I've read so many books, and I've got 20 years. Let's just stop at 20. Because then I'll be giving my age away. But
no age abuse.
Yeah, 20 years doing this, and I was kind of apprehensive. I remember when I wanted to feature you, and I thought, oh, I need to do this, but I had so much on my plate. But you told the story in such a way that I can honestly see this at some point. Not that you wanted to go there, but this could be a story easily told on a movie network, because I've seen it played over and over again. It was not boring. It was not confusing. You did it so well. You are you're doing the right thing for you. And then you're helping so many other people. And last week, when I heard you were coming on for sure, I was talking with Christelle and Tim. And one of the things I said is, when I started out in domestic violence, it was a grassroots operation. And here in the U.S., there were no rights for women who were abused either. And shelters wouldn't take a woman unless she was pregnant by her abuser or was legally married back then. So your reach is vast. And, hat tip to you for being able to do that. I appreciate your honesty, because you are saving lives by doing it, whether I know that all the time or not. You can plant a seed, and then because of this book, someone can find a way to exit.
Well, I mean, for me, it's like, you can pass on a leaflet, you can hear the word coercive control or trauma bond or gaslighting or any of these jargony type words, but would you really relate to it? So some people pass on the book to people that they think need to read it. And they have come out of those relationships, and it's really interesting to hear. And for me, I wanted that penny drop moment a lot earlier. I wanted, if I'd have read that, maybe I would have had that moment in that relationship, the ability to come out and find that help and support. I want to give people that opportunity to tune into what's happening in their household, and to then be able to go, right, what can I do about this now, before it becomes years down the line. There's people I've spoken to where they've been in a relationship for 20, 25 years, and they're just coming out, and I'm glad I wasn't that person, and this is still good that they came out, but how can we stop it sooner? Is what I was thinking.
Anybody got anything to say before I chime in?
I have a little bit. Tim, Tim, maybe you should go.
No, you go, because you haven't really asked the question as much. Yeah, Christelle, you go.
Well, you brought up an interesting point, and I've heard this as well before, that emotionally abusive relationships and abusive relationships are very much like going through war. And so oftentimes what the general public doesn't realize is, when one comes out of an abusive relationship, we're dealing with PTSD or CPTSD, which is CPTSD is something where you have lost all hope and you don't think you're going to get out. So you're dealing with that on top of the PTSD. So those people in those relationships are acting in fight or flight mode at all times. And even coming out of that relationship, we still have that anxiety and that PTSD or CPTSD where people who have gone through trauma, whether it be war or other acts of trauma, and especially as we're talking today, emotional abuse, that acting in fight or flight mode at all times. You don't have to answer this, but have you gotten help with PTSD, or do you have advice for those who might have PTSD, anxiety as it relates to abusive relationships? And what might you say to people who need that help and are scared to get it?
I would definitely say that I've not been diagnosed with it, but I've seen, counselor after counselor, been to the doctors. I have been on and off anxiety medication for different things, and that's depending on how my situation changes as well. And for most people, it's going to be difficult to overcome something you have been through if you're having to see that person, if you've got children with them. So it's really important for you to get that support, and you deserve that support and that freedom because you deserve better in your life. I want to say that I am in such a lovely position now. I'm in a happy, healthy relationship, and I think I talk about that side quite a bit on social media, because we could just stop at talking about what happened to me, but we need to have hope that there's something else further. So I'd tell people that if they think that they are still, having those moments where they don't want to go out of the house, or there's someone behind them, when you're walking down the street, that's, for me, I feel like there's someone behind me sometimes because of that anxiety or the PTSD. I would say go and get that help and support. And if you're, I don't want to say unfortunate to be in the UK where you can only get 12 counselling sessions, then go and pay for it. And I have invested, not just had the NHS, which is the National Health Service here in the UK, which is what we're covered by. I haven't just had that. I've also invested money when I didn't even have it in a coach, a parenting coach, to help with the situation. And because I recognised that I needed to do that for myself. So I always give myself permission. So if you can give yourself permission to be able to move forward and to, take those steps, then do that. And I do it daily. I give myself permission to do this interview. I'm not going to worry about my husband being downstairs and not able to come in the bedroom. I give myself permission to put makeup on and not feel bad. I give myself permission to go to London and go to networking opportunities and not feel bad I've left the kids home. I give myself permission constantly, like even getting a bath. I just have to say it that way to help myself. Hope that helps.
I did have another question, which is maybe a little bit bizarre, but well, I was thinking, because there must be children who grow up with parents in like a coercive control relationship. Do you think there is an element of generational kind of people copying their parents? So if it's a male child, well, it's like, say it's a female child of a female coercive control person, she will be the same with her relationships. Do you think there's anything like that? And how could people maybe spot the red flags that they have, like their parents were in that kind of coercive control relationship, and maybe try and make an effort not to have the same thing happen in their life?
Yeah, I think it's really difficult when we start looking at, did he learn this from his dad, or did she learn this from her mum? Because it is a part of it is learned behaviour, but you are brought up, even if you go into a school setting, to learn what is right and what is wrong, and you have a choice whether to change your blueprint. And that's what I would say, is that there's some stuff that I have seen my parents do or have done, and I have completely not agreed with what they have done, and I have decided that I am not going to go down that path and replicate it. And I know it's a bit different, but it's like looking at that, we've had people that have been in different situations that their parents have been X, Y, and Z, and they've been this completely different personality. So we all have a choice in what we do. There's two different types of abusers. There is one abuser where it's situational abuse. So that's they've drank alcohol, or they've taken drugs, or they have anger management issues, and they just incidentally, because they've drunk alcohol, taken it out on that person. But then you have the personality side, and that's really where the coercive control side is, if you look at it. And that is the abuser that it's a habit for them. It's just what they know. It's embedded in their system, and they're going to be the one that is dangerous and concerning, and also they're not going to be able to change their behavior as appropriately or to make a difference in their life. And you're going to try and tell an abuser what you've done is wrong when they think it's right. So there's a few ways to think about it, but we all have choices in life to take. And for my situation, my abuser's dad was abusive, and him and his mum and his dad basically left in a similar kind of way. So you can see history repeating itself, but it's not an excuse, is it?
No.
And people can learn it as well. So, for example, if you took those two abusers, the situational abuse and the personality disorder kind of person, and put them together in a, say, perpetrator program to overcome what they are doing, then the situational abuser will learn from the one with the personality disorder, and they will learn how to abuse in a different way, in the less physical but more emotional. So it's a case of them having the responsibility to, one, make their choices in their lives, which they know what they're doing. So that's the most important thing. They know what they're doing. And two, whether we can just minimize it by putting in that there. Now, if we're looking at our parents and we're thinking, the thing I would say to look at is if you've seen the Duluth wheels, which are the power and control wheels. There is a power control one, there's an equality one. So you can pretty much look at healthy relationship and unhealthy relationship, and it lists all the qualities of an abusive relationship and a non-abusive. And I would look at that because it's really interesting. One of the tasks I was given was just to highlight everything that was applicable to the relationship. And it was only until I highlighted and saw the wheel was mostly coloured that I realised it was abuse and it wasn't my fault. So do have a look at that. But, looking at the signs of your parents, I've talked about the subtleties, about, restrictions on seeing your friends and family, not having a choice in clothing, not having a choice in what you eat. Maybe if we're looking at the older generation, having chores done in a certain way, kind of 1950s style way of doing it. That's what it felt like for me, that I was the woman. I was meant to be in the kitchen at home with the kids. That's my job. That's all I can do. So, and then I think once you become tuned into looking and observing in different ways and looking at the victim's behavior as well. So that suppression of a personality and their behaviors, the way they look in their body language when that person is around, then you'll start to uncover what is going on. And it's difficult because when we are older and we're adults and we can then look back and observe our parents' behavior, if that is the situation, it's not an easy one to be in. I've had a lot of people that have read the booklet have then come to me and said, my mum is being abusive, or my dad is being abusive. And when we were talking about what coercive control is, I'm going to try and, spread it out with to make it, for me, what I switched on to when I sort of started learning about it. And I thought the simple way to explain something from a female is, do you remember when you were at school and there was always that girl that purposefully got pregnant by that boy, to keep a boy? That's an abusive tendency. So it's like, if we can start looking at things in different ways and pulling it apart, then we can see really what those traits are. So I hope that kind of helps giving you examples, and I think that's the best way to sort of describe or explain.
No, that's good. Go ahead, Tim. Sorry.
Well, I'm gonna take the interview into more happy world, eventually, even though this is very important. But obviously, you've been extremely successful in business. Like, you won an award at the UK Social Media Awards thing last October. Can you talk a bit about your business and how things have taken off? I mean, you can link it in with the abuse stuff as well if you want, if that's relevant, or just talk about your business for a little bit. So we have like some non-abuse stuff in the interview.
It's all good stuff, though. Let me just say, it's not unhappy. She's not crying. It's ended well. She's happily married with sounds like a wonderful husband, beautiful children. I've seen your family. She is successful. So it's not all sad. Let me just say, it's not all sad. I don't see any tears here.
A lot of hope. You're giving a lot of hope.
Yeah, well, that's really good, because a lot of people are like, I don't want to read your book because it's going to be depressing. And I think, April, I don't know how far you've got, but I'm hoping you will be enlightened and feel hopeful by the end of it.
Oh,
so
it's great.
That was the whole point, was to do that and to give people that side of it. So I went on this program, didn't I? This recovery program. That was the first time that I'd seen or spoken to another person who had experienced abuse. So for the 9 months of coming out of that relationship up until that program, I felt quite alien, because let's face it, the services around you are not, I don't want to say they're very helpful, but even the police sort of react it's quite an unusual circumstance to be in, which actually it's not, it's completely common. So that was my first experience of meeting other people that had gone through it. And I realised that they were going to help me more than other services or professionals, really, because let's face it, the people who've gone through it totally understand my thought process, and I might have times where I can't get out of a bad patch, or my thoughts are going crazy and thinking crazy things, when actually they're not crazy. It's just that's the way I was tuned in, and I'm trying to rework it. And so I set up #abuse talk, and that's a weekly Twitter chat where everyone meets virtually, and we discuss domestic abuse. And when I say that, people think, oh god, that's a bit depressing, but we have socials as well. So we have a social night. We try and mix up the themes. I mean, I think it was on Boxing Day this year. I do it every, whatever day it is on and wherever I am in the world, that talk will carry on, because people depend on that hour each week to be able to freely talk and to be understood by others. And that's all I set it up for, was to help. And I didn't expect it to get to a point where now it's sponsored. So I'm delighted that it's sponsored by different organisations and individuals. And actually, I'm just building its own individual website, and it's going to have an app being developed. So it's completely, and it's overtaken me. So #abuse talk is the brand, really, and I'm like, it's overtaken, what I was doing in a sense. But that's it, because it's organically grown, it's needed, people depend on that for them each week. So
I think what you've done is, oh, sorry, there's a little delay. Sorry about that. Go ahead.
No, what were you going to say? Sorry.
Oh, I was just going to say, talking about hope and positive, like Tim was saying, is that when I read your book, and of course I've been following you a while, I was thinking that, and I think I said this last week with them, that you're an example of what happens when someone takes their personal experience, turn it into a mission, and then it catapults into something else. You are a face of that. And that offers hope to a lot of people. There are a lot of bad things in the world, but sometimes the bad things or the disappointments or the tragedies, like in this case, I mean, look what you've done with it. So,
no, thank you. I really appreciate that. And like you said, you've seen my kids on social media, my happy lifestyle. And sometimes that doesn't work out so great, because people are like, I want to be where you are now. but it's just a long path. You can't get there straight away. It takes a long time, but you can take those steps forward to join me in future years where you are in the same kind of position. And I feel like I'm not there yet. I don't feel like I've achieved what I want to achieve, so I've still got a long way to go. And winning that award last year, I don't know if you saw my face, Tim, but I just was not. I just was like, I didn't prepare anything, so I hope they don't use the video of me. I was just like, what? I didn't kick in till a couple of days after, and for me, that really did. It meant something for me, and it opened an opportunity of raising more awareness by going to the local press and saying, look, we can talk about this in a positive light and whatnot. So yeah, it was a bit of a shock. I was shocked.
Congratulations.
No, thank you.
That's beautiful. I have one more question. That you invited me into an entrepreneurship, a business group that you're doing. Can you briefly touch on that?
Yeah, so that was because both me and my husband are self-employed. So do you remember right at the beginning of the interview, I told you that I set up a business in this abusive relationship? Well, I then went on to write a book and everything and got too busy with that to be able to do both. So I handed over my business to my husband, but to be fair, I still have involvement in it. But I couldn't do the two at the same time. And that business is like embroidery and printing. And we've sort of gone into everything you need for your business in one place is what our vision was for it, a one-stop shop. And off of that, I'd already had this Facebook group. And because of the coronavirus, I thought, well, his business has kind of come to a halt in a sense. Mine has kept going, which is great. So I thought, what can we do to help people in this situation? And so we've just sort of made this supportive group with free resources and information for people. It's a bit UK led, but there's people in there from Italy, Spain, Australia, and some US folk in there. So we're hoping to have representatives from each areas to help with that one. But it's got even information on grants and funding, and people have applied for grants that they never knew about and things like that. So it's really just to support small businesses and self-employed. And it's really good for me because I can utilize it with my message with domestic abuse. It's really good for my husband because he can use it for his business with the printing side. But we just did it because we wanted to. And to be honest, I have built so many different communities around different things. So I've got #AbuseTalk as a community. I've got quite a few things that I've built up before and then passed on to somebody because I can't deal with it anymore. And for me, I've been volunteering since I was 10 years old. That was just something in me. I don't know where it came from. And it just felt like I needed to do that for people, and everybody's received it well. I know Tim was on there tonight watching one of the Facebook Lives. So if anybody did want to join it, it's completely free to join. It's called Small Business Networking on Facebook, really easy to find. It's yellow and black. And we have a virtual pop-up shop at the weekend to help support small businesses and self-employed. So we've got a few authors in there now. I've tried to get a few of us in there and utilize it. So yeah, it's nice and friendly. I don't know if you've spent much time in there yet, but everybody sort of likes to chat and engage. So
I love the concept. I love the idea, and I want to explore a little bit more. You kind of lit a little fire under me. So thank you for that. That's exciting.
No problem.
Yeah, and I just want to know, why was I not invited, Jen?
I don't even think you're my Facebook friend, actually. I think you're my Twitter friend. People are starting to come onto all these different platforms, so I don't even think we're friends on Facebook.
Are we not friends on Facebook?
Christelle beat you to it.
Facebook is like my flop, you know. So
Yeah,
I don't
it's not like you're on a Facebook show or anything.
And that's a joke, Jen. That's a total joke. I know I can find you out there.
Yeah, you're completely welcome. So yeah, find me, and then We'll sort that issue out.
That's right. I'm hurt.
I mean, it's really funny though how we all talk on different platforms. So
Yeah.
Tim, I think I spoke to you originally on Instagram.
Yeah.
I think, or on Twitter, well, Twitter and Instagram, but we don't really talk much on Facebook. So it's like unusual when we do talk on Facebook because usually it's Instagram or, well, yeah, I think it is Instagram.
It's funny. I mean, I talk to people on WhatsApp, Facebook, Instagram, probably a few others as well. Like some people you text, but I mean, it's like in the UK you don't generally text people, I find. So yeah, there's so many different ways to contact people at the moment as we're discovering.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Pretty cool because this is, I know Tim already knows all this stuff. I don't know about Christelle, but this is like my first time really doing this live. I've tried to do a couple of things on Instagram and I have some things going forward, but it's my first time and, it's been really cool. What do you think, Christelle?
I'm enjoying this opportunity. I'm enjoying getting to know. What's interesting and fun is Tim, April, and I are getting to know each other through this show.
Yeah.
This is completely live. We sat down for a 4-hour dinner.
Yeah.
We were having incredible discussion. And at some point, either Tim or April or I said, we should take this live and see what happens. And Tim is so great at taking an idea and saying, well, we're doing it. And so it happened, and here we are. And now we get to bring on amazing guests such as yourself, Jennifer.
Yes.
Who can help bring awareness to the subject.
You will be maybe this show will blow up into a multimedia conglomeration TV show. And you were the first guest.
I was the first. Well, do you know what? I'm really impressed because I thought, wow, there's 3 of you. What is going to happen here? You're going to talk over each other. I had all these thoughts. I thought, am I going to be interrogated? But, you've done a great job. So, well done to you guys for setting it up. I think it's great.
Yeah.
I'd be interested to hear who you're interviewing next then. Do you know, or?
We do.
Go ahead.
Are you allowed to say?
He said that like it's secret.
Yeah. No, well, I mean, on Thursday, we're just going to do a show with us. We've decided, like ad hoc, that Tuesdays will be interview day. Thursday will be us just talking about stuff day. And next week, we're going to have the illustrator of Christelle's book, which is a children's book about love, apparently. Cats. I can't remember his whole name's quite long and Cat somebody or other. I'm sure Christelle.
He's on. You can find him on all social media networks as @CatOnPaper. Adorable. Yeah. He uses an adorable signature with a cat and on paper, I think it is, but it's @CatOnPaper. So we can find him on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. And he's an amazing illustrator. I am so blessed what he has done bringing my book to life in a way I wouldn't have had it brought to life without finding him. He's actually in the UK as well. He's in Scotland. So it's kind of fun finding this international community here and bringing them all together. So I'm excited.
Yeah, and I think accents will be interesting for you guys then in the end.
Oh,
Tim, not so much. Maybe.
I was worried about that because I've done other interviews with doctors in the UK, and it was really bad because I couldn't see them. We were just on the phone, and I was thinking, what is he saying? I didn't know what to say because some people's accent to us is really strong, just as when you hear us, ours can be really strong to you, I would imagine. And then I have a girlfriend who's Irish, and I can understand her, but if I talk to someone in Ireland, it takes a little more I have to pay attention. I feel kind of like a complete fool. So I think I should have probably studied some dialect there so that I could be better at this. So you're right. I was too. I was like, but I've heard you before in your, I think, videos and some lives before. So I knew. But yeah, this is pretty fun. I think this is a great interview. And I'm so thankful that you took the time out of your busy schedule that we actually got to meet. So you'll know when I say it's me, Jen. Just remember, imperfect April. That's all you need to know.
No, it's been really lovely. And I don't think you're the only one with the accents. I think Tim will agree that we probably get the same issues with Irish, Scottish, Welsh on occasion. It depends on the strength.
Get somebody from Glasgow drunk sometimes you can't understand a word they say. So, and I'm English, so.
There we go.
And I've had people it tends to be the South, well, Washington, D.C. and south of there, they don't tend to understand what I say. People on the West Coast seem to be fine. People in the Midwest seem to be fine. But like that whole sort of southern East Coast bit, so it'll be interesting when I go to Carolina, because I'm sure nobody will understand a word I say.
Oh, right.
That's funny. Oh my gosh.
Anyway, so I suppose we should ask you, and you've already said this a little bit, but how can people get in contact with you and find out about all these Facebook groups and wonderful businesses and chats and everything? How is the best way that people, if they're interested, can get in touch with you?
Yeah, so you can head to jennifergilmour.com. And Gilmour is spelled M-O-U-R, as you can see on the screen. That's something people get mixed up with, because I'm not technically a Gilmour girl. That's spelled differently, right? And you can find me. My tag everywhere is Jen, and then L for Laura Gilmour. So it's Jen L Gilmour, and you can find me across, I think, everywhere. Like, I'm even on Pinterest. Who's on Pinterest these days?
I'm on it.
I have a blog. I'm there.
So yeah,
hold up your book too. Hold up your book again.
Oh,
hold up your book again.
So I've got Isolation Junction and Clipped Wings there. This one is an anthology of survivor stories. It has 24 women and 1 male voice in there. And you get a full idea of domestic abuse from every part of that spectrum: financial, emotional, physical, sexual, even using medicine as a way to abuse as well. It sounds really horrible, but there's articles to help it and things as well in there. But yeah, so find me, jennifergilmour.com, and Abuse Talk is, you can just look up #Abuse Talk, and Christelle joined in last week and could see that it's pretty lively over there. It's quite fast paced, so it's quite a nice environment as well. Everyone's welcoming and non-judgmental, which we love.
Yeah, you gotta have non-judgmental. Yeah, for sure.
Well, thank you, Jennifer. It was so nice to meet you. I've met you a couple times now, but it's nice to see you live and be able to chat and hear your voice. So thank you so much for being with us and joining in our conversation.
No problem. Thank you again for the opportunity, and good luck with it all.
Thank you. We'll see you.
Yeah, quickly do it. That's the problem, isn't it? Bye. Hi, bye.
Bye, friends.
Bye.
Bye, guys.
Bye.